At Christmas dinner, with the candles still flickering and snow tapping the windows, my dad put down his fork, looked directly at me, and said, "You're a burden, and you can't stay here anymore." The room went silent. Even the food on my plate suddenly felt cold. I didn't argue or fall apart. I just watched the man I had supported for years act like he was the one letting me go. The next morning, I packed my things, walked downstairs, and told them I was done paying every bill in the house. That was when my dad reacted in a way none of us expected. I used to think Christmas softened people. That even in a home like ours, where tension filled the walls and silence often said more than words, there was still one night a year when we tried to act like a family. But that illusion disappeared the moment my dad's words cut through the air. After the shock faded, the truth settled heavily in my chest. This wasn't sudden. This had been building for a long time. Our house sat in a quiet suburb, the kind where every other home had perfectly trimmed lawns and warm holiday lights. Ours always seemed a little dimmer. Bills stacked on the counter, cold drafts slipping through cracked windows, the old heater humming as it tried to keep up. Yet somehow, I kept the lights on. Literally. I'd been paying the bills since I was 21. At first, it was supposedly temporary, just until your dad gets back on his feet. Then it became groceries, then the water bill, then the internet, then every expense the house relied on. I kept telling myself I was helping because that's what family was supposed to do. I didn't realize I was carrying all of us while pretending it wasn't wearing me down. Mom always tried to smooth things over, even when she didn't mean to. "Your father's just stressed," she would say, stirring pasta with tired motions, hoping the steam hid the tension in her voice. She worked part-time at a job she rarely talked about, and whenever money came up, she acted like she had no control over any of it. Maybe that was how she coped, by pretending she didn't notice the weight slowly being shifted onto me. Lena, 17, sharp and observant, always paid attention. She had learned early to read the room before walking into it. I noticed how she watched me during dinner, like she was waiting for someone else at the table to admit how unfair everything was. No one ever did, but she understood even if she couldn't say it. My father, Grant, hadn't worked in years. Officially, it was due to downsizing. Unofficially, he didn't want anyone telling him what to do. He spent most days pacing the living room with the TV playing in the background, sometimes mumbling about how the world didn't respect men like him anymore. But he always appreciated the groceries in the fridge, the warm water, and the Wi-Fi, everything I paid for. I kept hoping that if I continued giving, maybe one day he would see me. Not as income, but as his daughter. That was the lie I kept telling myself. And when he called me a burden so casually as if he'd been waiting to say it, everything inside me clicked. This wasn't anger. This was genuinely how he saw me. The next morning, when I zipped my suitcase, I realized something I hadn't admitted before. Leaving wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Staying was. I didn't sleep after Christmas dinner. I just lay awake, replaying his voice. "You're a burden. You can't live with us anymore." The words didn't echo, they carved. Each repetition reminded me that the man I'd been protecting didn't think I deserved a place in his home. The strange part wasn't the hurt, it was the sudden clarity. Around 3 a.m., I got up, wrapped myself in a coat, and walked quietly through the house. The living room smelled like pine and leftover casserole. The tree lights still blinked softly, pretending nothing had happened. My father's empty plate sat untouched, crumbs scattered like an afterthought. It all looked ordinary and cold. I noticed my mother's mug on the counter, tea gone cold, lipstick faded on the rim. She always cleaned before bed. Not last night. That told me more than any apology she didn't offer. Walking past Lena's room, I heard her shift. She wasn't sleeping either. I should have felt alone, but strangely, I didn't. The next morning, while the house was quiet, I started packing. Not in anger or panic, but calmly, like someone finally done pretending. Every folded sweater felt like a choice. Every zipped pouch like a boundary I should have set years earlier. Halfway through, Lena knocked softly. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her, arms crossed like she was preparing for something she already knew. "You're leaving," she whispered. "I am." She sat on the floor beside my suitcase, pulling her sleeves over her hands. He didn't mean it. I looked at her. truly looked at her, 17 and already carrying the emotional weight of parents who never learned to handle things gently. He did, I said. Her eyes watered, but she didn't cry. Lena never gave our parents the satisfaction of seeing her upset. What are you going to do? She asked. Figure it out, I said. First step is stopping the bills. Her head jerked up. Zoe, they can't afford anything without you. I know. She stared at me, shocked. Not because she disagreed, but because she had never heard me say something so firm. For years, the pattern had been the same. They'd take, I'd give. They'd expect, I'd deliver. And when I needed simple humanity, my father used a sentence that tore apart every illusion I had left about us. Leaving wasn't revenge. It was release. But part of me wondered if they would finally understand what I'd been carrying once the responsibility fell on them. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because consequences might be the only thing they understood. By noon, my suitcase was ready by the door. The winter sun slipped through the blinds in thin lines, lighting dust in the air. Everything felt suspended, as if the whole house was holding its breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what would happen if I said no. I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. As I reached for the doorknob, ready to step out of the only home I'd ever known, one truth settled deeply inside me. The real burden was never me. I left before the sun fully rose. The sky was washed in pale winter gray, making everything quieter than it really was. The house didn't move when the door closed behind me. No footsteps. No, wait, let's talk. Just silence. Fitting, honestly. Silence was what they were best at giving back. I drove to Jade's small apartment downtown with my suitcase in the back seat. Her place was tiny. 2 people could barely stand in the kitchen without bumping into each other. But when she opened the door, the air felt lighter, like the walls weren't holding years of tension. You look like you haven't slept in a year, she said, pulling me into a hug. I probably haven't, I replied. She didn't press for details. That was the kind of friend she was. Space first, questions later. I set my suitcase beside her couch, which would be my new bed for who knew how long. It sagged a little in the middle, but it felt like freedom. Around noon, the first shift happened. My phone buzzed again and again. 3 missed calls from Mom, 4 from Dad, 2 texts from Lena. They're freaking out. Call me. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I made instant coffee in Jade's chipped mug and sat on the edge of the couch, letting the steam warm my face. The simplicity felt luxurious after years of feeling responsible for everything. By evening, their messages changed. Not calls, panic. Mom texted, Zoe, something's wrong with the power. Can you check another? Here's the text exactly as you wrote it, word for word. I stared at the messages, a mix of sadness and steady resolve settling in my chest. They were finally feeling the weight I had carried alone for years. I typed back one simple sentence. I told you I stopped paying the bills. The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. But why would you do that? I almost laughed. Before I could reply, another message came from Lena. Dad's losing it. He said, This is your fault. He said, You're punishing them. Punishing. An interesting choice of word, considering all I had done was step back. They were simply experiencing what life looked like without someone absorbing every blow for them. That night, I logged into my accounts, not to manage their needs, but to protect my own. I removed my name from every remaining payment. Internet, water, electric, all the things that had quietly kept the house functioning while they pretended stability didn't cost anything. When I clicked confirm, something inside me settled. A boundary finally fully drawn. The next morning, I woke to a different alert. Suspicious login attempt detected. My heart thudded once, then faster. I opened the banking app. 3 failed login attempts. 1 attempted password reset. I didn't need an investigator to know who tried it. My father couldn't control me anymore, so he wanted access to my money instead. Jade noticed the look on my face when I entered the kitchen. Zoe, what happened? I held up my phone. They're not just panicking, I said softly. They're desperate, and desperate people make risky choices. Seeing those login attempts didn't scare me. It clarified everything. This wasn't just a family unraveling. This was what happened when people who depended on you without acknowledgement suddenly realized the safety net was gone. I changed every password. Banking, email, streaming, until even I had to double-check the new ones. Then I called the bank, explained the situation, and had them lock the account so tightly that no one could access it without heavy verification. By the time I finished, my phone buzzed again. Lena this time. Dad's yelling. He said, "You sabotaged the house." Mom's crying. They don't know what to do. I stared at the text. I didn't want this for Lena. She was still a teenager trying to survive an environment she didn't create. But whenever guilt tried to rise, I reminded myself, I didn't do this to them. They created their own crisis. I called her. She answered instantly, whispering like she was hiding. "He's losing it," she said. "I think he tried to get into your accounts." "I know," I replied. She muttered under her breath. "Of course he did." A loud crash sounded behind her, something heavy hitting the floor. She inhaled sharply. "I have to go," she whispered. "Please be careful." That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. Around 7 p.m., Jade and I were sitting on the couch watching an old sitcom, though neither of us was paying attention. Then, pounding on the door, not a knock, a hard impact, shaking the walls. Jade muted the TV. "Zoe?" My stomach tightened. I already knew. I walked to the peephole. Grant, red-faced, jaw tight, fists clenched as if he might force his way in. "Zoe!" he shouted. "Open the door!" Jade whispered, "Do not open it." He hit the door again, harder. "You think you can walk away? You think you can take everything after what we've done for you?" That line nearly made me laugh. Done for me. What exactly? I didn't answer. I stepped back and grabbed my phone. Another hit rattled the frame. "Open the door," he yelled. "I'm calling the police," I said loudly enough for him to hear. "You wouldn't dare." I dialed. The dispatcher answered. 911. What's your emergency?" "My father is trying to break into my friend's apartment," I said. "He's pounding on the door and shouting." Grant must have heard because the pounding stopped. For a moment, silence. Then he shouted again. "You ungrateful." "Officers are on their way," the dispatcher said. 2 minutes later, sirens echoed through the hallway. Jade counted the approaching footsteps, firm and steady. A voice commanded, "Sir, step back from the door." More yelling, a short struggle, then quiet. When I opened the door, 2 officers were cuffing Grant. His chest rose with anger. When he saw me, his expression hardened, not with regret, but with a cold hatred that made my skin prickle. "You did this," he growled. "No," I replied calmly. "You did." They escorted him away. But it didn't end there. The next morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. I ignored it, but a text followed. "You're going to regret this." A chill ran through me. I recognized the tone immediately. He was out. Someone had bailed him. I drove to the house with Jade. I didn't want to face whatever came next alone. Lena had texted that Mom was acting strange, and I should get my things before she did something with them. When we pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong instantly. My car, the one I'd safely left at Jade's, was now sitting in front of the garage. The seat pushed all the way back, glove box open, gas tank almost empty. Jade whispered, "Zoe, they took your car." I got out slowly, bracing myself. Mom burst out the front door, not with warmth but accusation. "You called the cops on your father," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "You stole my car," I said evenly. "It was sitting there unused," she argued. "We needed it." "That doesn't make it yours." Every word from her was an excuse. "I want my keys," I said. "I don't have them." "Then you won't mind if I call the police again." Her expression cracked for a second. Without speaking, she went inside. She returned and threw the keys at my feet like they were trash. "Happy now?" "No," I said, "but I will be." Inside, Lena rushed to me. "Mom took your laptop. She pawned it." My chest tightened. "Where is it?" "She said she needed money. I tried to stop her." I turned to my mother. "Did you pawn my laptop?" She didn't look guilty, just irritated. "You left it here. That makes it ours. We needed the money." That was it. I dialed the police again. Her eyes widened. "Zoe, don't you dare." "Yes, hello," I said into the phone as she stared at me in disbelief. "I'd like to report stolen property." When the officers arrived, she tried everything. Denial, tears, guilt. But Lena stood beside me and told the truth. They cuffed my mother in the driveway. Once neighbors peeked through their blinds, the cold air felt sharp. My mother pleaded and said things no parent should say. I didn't move. As they placed her in the car, a calm sense of release settled over me. Not victory, not revenge, just freedom. The final thread tying me to that harmful environment snapped. Lena helped me gather the rest of my things quietly, her hands trembling slightly. You're really leaving, she whispered. I already left, I said. She nodded, eyes watering. I'm coming too when I'm 18. I believed her. When Jade and I loaded the last box into her car, headlights approached. Grant stepped out. I didn't react. I simply looked at him the way someone looks at a storm, unavoidable but survivable. If you come near me again, I said through the window, I'll file a restraining order. His jaw tightened. You think you're better than us? For the first time, I answered. I know I am. We drove away. I didn't look back. In the following weeks, everything that once felt tangled slowly became clear. My mother faced the legal consequences for pawning my laptop. For the first time, I wasn't the one cleaning up the aftermath. The charges weren't severe, but they forced accountability, something she had avoided my whole life. My father, angry and without anyone to blame but himself, bounced between short-term jobs and angry calls I never answered. I blocked every number before the messages could pile up. Lena updated me carefully. The house grew colder after the utilities were shut off. Eventually, they couldn't keep up with the bills and had to move to a run-down apartment with thin walls and flickering hallway lights. Their decline wasn't dramatic, just slow and predictable. Meanwhile, my life finally felt like mine. I signed a lease on a small studio with big windows and no history attached. I learned what real peace feels like. And Lena began counting the days until she turned 18. For the first time, the future didn't feel heavy. When Lena turned 18 and left the house for good, she called me from a bus stop, breathless and relieved. I picked her up, and as she got into the passenger seat, she whispered, "We made it." And for the first time, I believed her. Pain didn't define our story anymore.